There we go. Good morning, everyone. Let me go ahead before we get started and make sure that the chat is open. Lori, there we go. We're all set. So Emma, you don't have to remind me. Thank you so
I was
much.
just going to say, we know if the chat's open, if Emma's in the chat. If Emma's not in the chat, it is not open or something's going on and Emma's at school with her kids or something, because that's usually when Emma's not with us.
That's so true. It looks like we've got Tayshawn, Kanisha. Good morning to you both. Good morning to everyone who's on. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
Great. So welcome back to all our frequent flyers. Thank you for being here every week. And to those that are new, I know I've just talked to some new people that just joining us now. So that's a wonderful thing. We got a very exciting show today, as always. Wasn't last week fun as well to go through the whole story from beginning to sell? It was really interesting.
Last week was fun. And Rob seems to have a lot of fun stories. So
yeah, he does. You know, that's one thing I love. I've always wanted to have a talk show. I've always loved having conversations and interviewing and everything like this. So this is my dream come true. I remember when I was a kid, my mom, or especially my dad, used to say, can't you ever shut up? You know, you can imagine me just right. And I think back and I go, well, now I make a living at talking. So
there you go. There you have it.
Good thing I didn't shut up, right?
That's so true. Really quickly, I wanted to first off apologize. I think I said to Sean, and it's to Shauna. Nancy Lynn, I'm so glad that you're back. We know you've missed a few, but glad you're back. And Maggie, and again, Kanisha, good morning to you both. Kanisha says he was fun. So she enjoyed Rob too.
Well, and I always have a thing about life that I say, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it.
There you go.
Okay, if it's not going to be fun, I'm not in. And even if I have to make it fun, I'm going to make it fun, because that's right. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today as well. So with that, I think our numbers are coming in. I'm going to let you go ahead and get us started, Lauren.
Perfect. I'm all about the fun. So you tell me, and today's guest is going to be quite amazing. I'm very excited, Lori. Let me confirm you can see the slides okay?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, great. I'm sure everyone, our frequent flyers, can totally do this intro for me, I know at this point.
Yeah.
I'll fly through it though. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lauren Simpson and I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. You have joined us today and we are super excited to have you. Let me jump into who the SBDC is. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. And you'll note that our services are at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. For the Los Angeles network, we serve the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And we have physical locations, most of which aren't open as of yet, but you can get in contact with some pretty great resources and business advisors at each. You'll see that we have locations in Santa Clarita, Camarillo, all the way over to Laverne. Let me not pass up Pasadena, of course, throughout Los Angeles, the South Bay, all the way down into Long Beach. So again, we serve the Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, and Ventura counties. I'm reminding you of that because here's a little deeper dive into what it is that we offer. So we have no cost business advising and we have no cost virtual trainings. So if I go back to the business advising, you're able to sit one-on-one via Zoom or a phone call with one of our business experts. We have tons of experts in the genres of if you're looking to create a marketing plan, or if you're just starting out and wanting to create a business plan. And then if you if she, I should say, has the time, you're able to sit with our guru of numbers, Miss Lori Williams. And then for the virtual trainings, they're comprehensive workshops. We're here to help you adapt and grow. We're also here to help you start out. That said, be sure to get in contact with us. We're here to answer any kind of questions and again, help you along your entrepreneurial journey. We can be reached at 866-588-7232 or go online, smallbizla.org/new client. For those of you who have reached us and you're outside of our service area, that means you are outside of the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Please go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. Really quickly before Lori dives in, I want to remind everyone to please put their questions into the Q&A. Again, questions in the Q&A. We're going to keep the chat reserved for chatting and then also sharing any kind of useful links and tidbits that Lori would like to share with you. And I think, Lori, that's it for me. Good morning again to you.
Awesome. Good morning. And with this, Lauren's going to be putting a whole bunch of things into the chat right now on what I'm going to go over. So one of the things I just wanted to keep this slide in, this is, some of these slides are if it applies to you, it may not apply to all, but I wanted to bring this up that California does allow certain corporations to convert to other types of corporations. And this is the website you can go to find out more about it. I didn't hear a lot about this capability under California, and I researched it some time ago for a client. And then I noticed that they have a whole web page dedicated to it. So I just want to bring this to people's attention in case they need this down the road, which brings up another reason for what this is. So I'm going to show you 3 screenshots. Lauren's going to put the link into the chat, and I'm going to tell you why I'm showing this. So this is a shout out to anybody who has a company registered in the state of California, an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, what have you. I am suggesting that on occasion, you check in the government files the status of your company. Now, why am I suggesting this? I do it immediately when I'm speaking to someone, and sometimes I see that they didn't pay the $800 yearly fee. Their company has been suspended. They were not aware of it. I can tell you that banks check this. And so this is one of those things. Think of it like your credit file. Every once in a while, you should check your credit file. I want to show you how to check your status of the company. So Lauren's going to put the link in the chat, and you can see right here where my cursor is, it says free business search and copies. You select this, and then what happens is the next screen gives you this box. You have to put your corporate number in. This is not your EIN, not your EIN. This is the number that would be on your articles of incorporation or articles of organization. Now, you can put the company name in, but it's got to be exactly the way it shows on that paper or it will not come up. So what I did is I put in a company name that I had years ago in California so I could show this live on TV without showing somebody's name. So here is the company that I have. You can see it says it's terminated, which is good because I terminated. This should say active. Now, when you click on this box right here, the next screen that comes up is over to the right, and it says I terminated it. It was in good standing when I did, my address, what kind of company it was, etc. And then you could see here on the lower corner, if I click on that, it gives me a timeline of every document filed. So if you are missing your statement of information or you're missing your incorporation documents, you can click on this. It'll do a drop down and you can download your documents. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. I'll probably show it again next week so people have a heads up about it. It's just a good idea to make sure you are always in good standing, and this is how you do that. Okay, and then I'm keeping the where's my refund. If you want to check on the refund for your tax return, this will be the website to the IRS to get there to find that out. Upcoming classes, I'm starting my April series of the financial literacy, session 1, 2, and 3. These are really becoming a big hit, especially session 2 and session 3, where I take you through a process of using an Excel document to do formulas to manage your data, identify if you're profitable, make choices, make changes, decision making through managing your company based on your data. So here's those coming up. Sign up for those. And lastly, we got upcoming shows. Next week, we got Laura Milliman. She's going to talk about her company, Southern California Bartending School. Then we got Samara coming back on. I always have her back on because she talks about all HR things, and we have more questions than we have time for. And of course, then our lovely Deborah Darris, our social media goddess, will come on. So that's upcoming information of what we're going to be doing soon. Now, to talk about today, I'm doing something really special and unique and inviting full audience participation. So let me give you an idea before I introduce our guest, what we're going to be doing. Over the course of time, we have the show. I was talking to Lauren before the show about this. We have guests come on, they're talking about their business, what they've done, their entrepreneurial journey. And I notice in the chat, a lot of people talk about the emotional side of being an entrepreneur, the person. What is it like? Wow, that was inspiring. I'm right there myself. I really needed to hear that. So it's the person behind the company that we're talking about in that aspect. I also know on the other side, in my conversations with clients every week through the SBDC, after the last several very challenging years, many are facing a decision. Do I continue? Do I shut down? And it's a very emotional and challenging decision. And so what I wanted to do is I really wanted to talk about the person, the entrepreneur, that's the person, the mindset, but also the good, bad, and ugly, and have a dialogue that you can sit back and say, hey, you know what? I feel inspired. I can challenge that, or I just was great to even hear it said. So I thought, well, who can I bring on the show with me to have this dialogue? So some of you may remember Barney Santos on a show some time ago. As a serial entrepreneur, Barney has spent the past 16 years launching, building, managing for profit, nonprofit, academic, and corporate business ventures. He is currently using this expertise as CEO of Hemptify to develop new products and services that address underserved neighborhoods in order to increase entrepreneurial activity and foster local economic empowerment. His latest venture, Boulevard Market, is a food hall business incubator that helps emerging local entrepreneurs launch their business. If I was to say Barney is an entrepreneur, around entrepreneurs, experienced entrepreneurs on every level, that would be a true statement. So Barney holds a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship from Cal State LA, a master's degree in entrepreneurship and innovation from USC, and has been trained in entrepreneurship methodology by the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corp. Once again, more layers. You can see Barney and entrepreneur are synonymous. One thing that piqued my interest is the last time he was on the show, which Lauren will pull up that if she can find it and put it into the chat. We really started talking on a philosophical level. And that's when I said, I know for what I want to do today, my perfect guest is Barney. Barney, welcome back to the show. And thank you so much for coming here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really great. It's always a pleasure to come back.
And we got to do a shout out to Pasadena. Annie, if you're here with us, because Barney is also an advisor at the Pasadena SBDC. So we got to do a huge shout out to Pasadena. So Barney, I want to first take us a little bit back for those who hadn't seen the first show and are not familiar with you. So take us from your humble beginnings up to what you're involved in now. Give us kind of a quick walk around the block, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you did a really good job with the bio. To be honest, I just, I'm a first generation Latino. My parents were from El Salvador. They immigrated here, and like most immigrants, that it's in itself is an entrepreneurial story. So, they came during the 80s. My mother got here, and she was, part of the Reagan amnesty. So, thankfully, because of that policy decision, we were able to live not in the shadows, and so we're able to kind of like, my mother was able to do what she needed to do. But, my mother and father were very entrepreneurial themselves. Like most people who immigrate to this country, they kind of, were always doing side hustles or things. And I saw that and I was around that all the time. So for me, it was like second nature. I just kind of grew around that environment. And, I was always doing something, whether I was selling comic books when I was a kid or, selling chocolates when I was in high school, or, I was always involved with something. And so by the time I left high school, I just sort of, stumbled into the real entrepreneurial, the thickness of it, and decided to develop myself there. And it's been a great journey so far. And, when I marry the fact that I'm in love with my community and can build space and can do cool stuff that, our community, like, it resonates with and brands resonate with, and it makes me very happy to know that. And so I'm just really excited to kind of be able to help my community out in the way that we can, building the products and invest in the people that we can, do so.
That was perfect, Barney, because it gets to the root of where I'm wanting to go today. I have a dissimilar but similar background, and I always share with people that I was born and raised in the country. I'm just country folk, right? That's all I am, right? And so when I thought of entrepreneur, I thought of the local farmer. I thought of the person that was selling, repair tires. I didn't think of anything fancy like we see today. I just thought of the, traditional person. And so in that, I think that, and this is my opinion, so it may be not a shared opinion, but to me, just like anything, when Hollywood gets a little bit involved in things, it becomes distorted. And I think that a lot of our entrepreneurs today have been distorted and believing that entrepreneurship is something that they have to aspire to be like a magazine picture. Like when we're kids, we want to grow up to look like the superhero, and we come back short, right? When in actuality, I think entrepreneurship is more about just figuring out what you're wanting to do and what's needed in the marketplace. So my goal is to kind of bring us back to those traditional values and truth, which you experienced as a kid, about what an entrepreneur is. So let's start out. What do you think makes somebody an entrepreneur, and what makes them an employee? What's the difference? Is there even a difference? And this is just a personal opinion. What's your thoughts on that very high philosophical question?
That's interesting, right? Because entrepreneurship, from a pedagogical standpoint, academics, right? There's like the Western philosophy, and there's like the Eastern philosophy and European philosophy. On the West, entrepreneurship is very clearly defined as sort of value creation in a form of a venture, right? Some sort of venture, or something that generates some sort of value from a capitalistic perspective, right? But you think about what Europeans look at entrepreneurship from an academic standpoint, and they consider it more of like sort of like ideas and thoughts and creative thinking, and they think of it more like, well, it is more of a philosophy, right? They think that most people can be an entrepreneur, and I kind of lie in somewhere in between, right? I like the idea of entrepreneurial thinking and ending in some sort of like venture or something that you can generate money from. But I look, the truth is like the same type of creative thinking and entrepreneurial thinking, which is like essentially resourcefulness, is a chef experiences that when they open up a refrigerator and see that they have they have ketchup, they have bologna, they have lettuce, they have bread, and they think like, okay, what can I make with this, right? And the average person will think a sandwich. Well, they might look at it and be like, well, no, I can make some sort of new thing, right? And sort of that is entrepreneurial thinking, right? Taking what you have, your means, and then making something from that. And employees, like to your point, I think a lot of employees do that on a day-to-day basis, where they think like entrepreneurs and they act like entrepreneurs, but but they're not rewarded in the same way, right? There's no risk reward battle there, and I think that is the crux. That could be the thing that maybe from a philosophical standpoint makes it not entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur has a heavy burden on their shoulder, right? They are risking their 401k. They are putting, like their mortgage in jeopardy, their family's in jeopardy, right? They're eating ramen, because they can't afford to,
Right.
to eat out, and the person who's corporate, even in corporate entrepreneurship, because I was a part of corporate entrepreneurship myself, we were tasked to like build new business models within a big giant Fortune 100. The economic incentives and risks is not aligned. So people aren't married to something the same way, right? Like they're not about to risk it all to launch a venture that doesn't give them equity points, right? So
I love what you're saying, and I think it's so true. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the finance aspect. And some people, you just got married, have how many kids, what have you, you maybe cannot take on the uncertainty of how much you're going to get paid from the company and when, whereas being an employee, technically until that job's no longer there, you then have this given paycheck. So I think in spirit wise, some of them are the same, being an employee or an entrepreneur, but a lot of it has to do with the financial capability and the desire to take on risk. And I always try to emphasize too that it's not like being an entrepreneur means you're good and cool. Not being an entrepreneur means you're not. It's just a different way of figuring out how you want to live your life. What kind of experiences do you want to have? And I think that in that, it kind of gives some freedom to say, I can go whichever direction I want to experience and not be believing that one's better than another. So that brings to another question, and that is this whole concept of success. I'm going to throw a couple things out there, Barney, that I thought over the years. As an early entrepreneur in my 20s, I was scared. I'm going to say a bad word on TV, shitless. I was scared shitless every single day that I was going to fail. And I had no backup. So financially, I was scared, right? And I was always worried about being successful. I had to be successful. I had to be successful. And it was driving me insane. So being of this, kind of concept of I always am looking for what's a deeper way to think of things, I decided to rewrite the word success and failure. I decided to fail was to just not try. And to succeed was just experience. And that gave me the freedom to pursue. So do you think sometimes entrepreneurs get too caught up mentally in their own success and maybe they're blindsided? Maybe they're not aware of changes in the marketplace. They buy into their own optimism and fear runs some of their decisions. Go wherever you want on that. But let's talk about how the emotions of the person can help or hinder their entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah, it depends, right? This is an interesting topic. Was having a discussion with a friend of mine the other day about, there's people, and I would probably consider myself one of them. I think entrepreneurs in general are very agitated people, right? we tend to like see stuff and we're like, oh, that could be totally better. Or there's always something, an experience, a service, a product, a design feature, whatever, that we're always sort of like bugging us. But I think when we're on our road to entrepreneurship, we learn to embrace the agitation to navigate through chaos, right, and uncertainty. That when we land at a place where we have a business that actually is becoming stabilized or successful, I think a lot of people end up doing is unfortunately creating self-sabotaging moments where they reintroduce the chaos because they feel so comfortable navigating in it. And so that I see that happen a lot, actually. Maybe not, advertently or inadvertently, but I think I see a lot of that happening with people. And maybe because of that, it gives either entrepreneurs the opportunity to say, okay, well, let's see if we can grow, right? And look at the marketplace and do something like that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who will just, sabotage their business by not doing what it needs to do, not treating it the way it needs to be treated, who won't do their books or won't update their information, who won't market, who put all that stuff on the back burner because it just, it just doesn't serve them or whatever reason. I don't know, maybe they're just being lazy, but yeah, I see a lot of that stuff happening. And that's an interesting.
That is so true. There is so much I got to unpack with that, Barney. We got to stop there and we got to unpack on that because I want to bring up something that you just said, and it's this concept of I really need to take care of these activities, the marketing, doing the finance, doing the books, and it should be really, if you will, front of mind for the entrepreneur, but they get going in all these different directions, and the things that sustain the company, the very foundations, they don't pay a close enough attention to. So I'm going to bring a new word in, Barney, and you can tell me what you think of this word. Discipline. Okay. I'm a very disciplined person. I'm all German. It's just in my way of being. And I think that being an entrepreneur requires these two traits. One of them is this, venture and go and maybe a bit of a dreamer, but the other one is being disciplined in thought, disciplined in action. And like you said, entrepreneurs, they see something and they want to go fix it, but you got to make sure you maintain the path to a certain degree. Otherwise, you're all over the place, right? So how do you feel that discipline and maintaining the course and tempering the entrepreneur spirit at times is part of what's required as well? Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I think there's two types of people, right? There's founders who like to build and who like to navigate through the chaos of that, right?
Right.
And then there's operators. And I think the operational side of business can be boring a lot of times for founders because it requires a whole different set of skill sets, right? It requires discipline. It requires insightfulness. It requires forecasting and linear regressions and all kinds of doing your research, and that part of it, unfortunately, you don't have to have the discipline in that fundamental business savvy skill set to build the startup, to get to the point where you need to most of the skill set you need to start a business is you need to be resourceful, you need to be resilient, you need to be a good salesperson, you need to be able to communicate correctly, you need to have the ability to believe in yourself tremendously and through that wherewithal of the ups and downs of starting up. But nowhere in that space really is you need to have strong discipline fundamentals on accounting, right? Because essentially you're pre-revenue. So what are you accounting for, right? Maybe you accounting for costs, right? Because you have pre-costs for your startup. But once you get into that space of your operating, it's a whole different ballgame. And you're absolutely right. I get, having gone through this myself so many different times, I prefer building than operating. I can operate, right? I went to school. I enjoyed numbers. I like spreadsheets. I could do. Marketing to me is I love it. I love coming up with ideas and executing. But I think what I'm finding myself is, the true essence of entrepreneurship is being able to say, okay, how can I build the system so that I don't have to do that, and then build and manage the team. And unfortunately, a lot of small business owners don't ever get to that point. They are in the constant, I have to do it. I have to do this, and I have to clean the floors. I also have to market. I have to, and they get stuck. They get stuck in that, the foundations that, really they could outsource to somebody else. But yeah, that's kind of what I see a lot of times. It's two different skill sets, and they're always constantly battling with each other. Operations definitely need more discipline, but you also don't have to do it all. You can just figure out how to, get a little bit more cash flow and outsource that, and then you spend your time doing what the entrepreneur is supposed to really do, which is build a team, grow the business, get more capital, grow the business, and execute a solid strategy. I mean, that's really what a CEO is supposed to do, at least, or have a partner that's good at that, right? I mean, that's
Right,
the other
right.
option.
Right. Absolutely. And this brings up another aspect. So as you talked about the different steps and processes, you can see that there's a lot of decisions that the entrepreneur is making along the way that's going to kind of lead that company to success, or maybe not to succeeding. Now, there was something interesting, and I can't give credit to the place because I don't recall where it happened. I read it so long ago, but it might have been a Harvard review. But what they did is they went through all these companies that had succeeded greatly, and they were trying to identify a commonality. Was it that they had enough capital? Was it that they had perfect management? Was it that they had expertise? They went through all this list, right? And we wanted to walk away saying it was capital, but they found many that had the most capital did not make it, right? It was the management. They knew what they were doing. No, they found many of them that had lots of experience didn't. And I remember reading this in my 20s and 30s when I was an entrepreneur and thinking, wow. So to my actual happiness in the results in some way, because it fed into where I needed to be mentally, they came up to this really fascinating conclusion, Barney. It was the right product at the right time. That it just, they happened upon the right product at the right time, and whether they had the best management team, the capital, or what, they took off. And so where I got out of that, and I think why I needed to hear that at that moment in my life, is I had to know that even if it didn't make it, it wasn't always something I could control. Some of it was just the fate of where it's at. Thoughts on that to give a little bit of breathing room to some of our entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think I want to say you're talking about Bill Gross from Idea Lab.
I could be, I could be. Absolutely, I could, now that you say that.
Yeah, he did a whole, he's like the father of incubators. He's like, and incubator studios, right? Where they've incubated so many companies. He's built so much money. I put the link of that TEDx talk in. So he talked about all the things that in his experience documenting and collecting data, like what makes startups succeed. And it was timing was the number one thing. Time, and the second thing was team. But timing is so important. Like there's so many people that have had ideas, and again, ideas are one in a million, right? But it's about executing at the right time. I'll take Boulevard Market for instance as a perfect example. We opened up our business. We started working on our company about 7 years ago. It took 6 years to open it because of just public-private partnership, raising money, the whole thing. It was just a whole bunch of stuff that just delayed us. COVID, right? And we literally were building it in the middle of COVID. As March was locked down, construction started in February. So it's like we were in the middle of COVID. Everything was locked down while we were building this thing out. And I just remember thinking to myself, when we opened August of 2021. It was like 3 months after the COVID the tightness lifted, and people can go outside and eat in outdoor courtyards and we had a courtyard patio. And I just thought to myself, man, if we would have opened this just 6 months before, or even a year before, when we were scheduled to open, we would have crashed and burned and failed. Timing was just perfect. It was we were one of the only outdoor patios in all of East LA that looked at the way that we did, that had the amount of food that we had. It was just perfect timing. And I think because of it, it really lent itself to kind of our success. 3 months after we opened, maybe 2 months after we opened, Netflix reached out for a partnership, and they were just it was timing. They had a show that was launching. It was aligned with our show, and that put us on the map, with US News and Time, and we were LA Week. We were on all kinds of, with all 3 months. And it was if we hadn't opened at that time, we would have never gotten that opportunity. So just all time, it's all serendipitous. Yeah. The timing is so important. The market has to be right for it. The demand has to be right there for it. We had all these assumptions, but trying to align all that stuff is tough. It's so tough. But I think there's a lot to say about that. Timing is perfect. At the time there wasn't a lot of projects like ours, and now you're starting to see more and more and more of them. So it's interesting to me, honestly.
Yeah. And you know what? This parlays perfect into where I want to go next on the timing. So I'll make the statement, I'll say where I'm going with this, because I think, and I want to get your opinion, that this is a key thing to understand from a philosophical standpoint. So let me say it this way. I believe that a person needs to find themselves separate from their company in order to remain agile, aware, awake what's going on, and respond to changes, just like you said, timing, right? So I believe if you look at the end goal is to find the activity that has the greatest chance of what I call buying a quart of milk, because we got to feed ourselves, right? And the greatest chance of buying a quart of milk and buying it in a way that's most pleasant and we're enjoying what we're doing. I mean, that's the ultimate. If I can figure out how I can do something, buy a quart of milk, and I enjoy doing it, that's the goal. But if you get attached to this company is me and I am the company, you won't see opportunity around you. And Barney, I bring this right up now because over the pandemic, I've had to talk to many people that I say, the company is just not going to be able to make it through what it experienced. But that doesn't mean that you can't shut this down and find yourself in an entrepreneurial venture that's different down the road. You aren't dying. The company may die right now, but you aren't dying. And so many I have now talked to 2-3 years later that are like, oh my God, Lori, that was the greatest thing. And I know in my own history, when I shut down one of my companies, I was like, oh, devastated, I failed. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not in my marketing company that I started at 20. I wouldn't be the guru of all numbers. So my thought of this, Barney, is being able to fall in love with your company enough to have the passion to do it every day, but maintaining a self-identity that you are the person and the entrepreneur. So you stay a distance to be in reality about where the company actually is. And what I'm talking about, reality, really, I guess, Barney, is the word, reality, facing reality when you have to. Thoughts on that?
That's tough. Yeah, it's so intertwined because you invest your entire being into building this thing. Like it's like a child.
Yeah.
You're like imprinting yourself into this entity as much as you can because you're guiding through values, you're guiding through your principles, you're steering it the course of direction based on what you think is correct, what you don't think is correct. You are the ultimate parent of this child that you've birthed into the world. Now, if in the situation a business fails, and a lot of times people wrap their entire identities around that business, like you said. I know that happened to me. Like I had a company that failed back in 2008 because of the market crash, right? And and it was like I had achieved so much when I was like 23, 24, something like that. I had bought a penthouse loft in downtown Los Angeles. I was driving like $100,000 car. I thought I was sitting on top of the world at that age, and it all came to a stop. Like within March, it was like another March. I get all the tragedies happened in March. March, it was like I remember the call from my lender was like, "Hey, sorry, we're gonna stop funding your deals." And I was just like, what? Maybe for a week? I was like, no, we don't. When it's not gonna be that way. And I just remember my whole world just crumbling. And there was like 3 months where I was deeply depressed, because I was at that point where I just didn't know what that meant for me. Like I had built myself up. I had spent money on coaching. I had hired employees. I did everything I needed to do, and my business was failing. But just because the business was failing doesn't mean that I was a failure.
Right.
It was, but you got to go through those lessons, right? Like in order to separate yourself from the situation. And I knew 3 months after that, I started my second business because I told myself, if I don't get on this horse again, I'm going to be an employee for the rest of my life. And I don't want to do that. I knew that enough about myself was that I don't want to go work for anybody at that moment. And so I right away got a gig doing something else for 6 months just to learn a new business. And then I opened up my second business after that, which became one of the largest growing asset management inspecting companies in South LA. At the time, we were managing like $500 million worth of assets within like a couple of years. So we tend to wrap ourselves, and it's hard not to disconnect. But I think one thing that helps me at least, and this is what all the people that I work with and I coach and advise and I incubate in my businesses, I always try to tell them, remember, you and your business are two different things. When you're trying to, your business is the product you're building. So that's a company. That's a separate thing from you. Your goal is to get yourself out of that as much as you possibly can, right? You don't have to be doing everything. The goal is to build out the systems, get enough capital, hire enough people, do what you need to do, get to a point where you need to fire yourself from every single position because that is a separate thing that exists outside of you. And then that way your desire and your passions are more aligned with your desire, which is to build more little systems, more little companies. Because once you know how to do it once, you can pull those levers again in multiple types of businesses. And that is the goal, at least for myself. For a lot of people, maybe it's like, well, look, I'm happy with the small business, but they wrap up their whole identity. And so, I think it's tough. I think it's tough for them. And right now, a lot of people are going through that. We talked about, the PPP kind of put a Band-Aid on things, grants put Band-Aids on things, but the demand they never learned the fundamental skills to get those customers back, right? A lot of people still think, existing is marketing. And I'm always telling people like, no, Marketing is actual activities, activations. You can't just exist and market, and that's marketing. People don't know who you are and where you're at. So
Yeah.
they never learned those foundations. They just got money. They injected themselves with cash, and they thought, "Oh, my P&L looks great. My balance sheet looks fantastic," but it was just all a cover. It's just a cover
Yep.
and
Yep.
never learned the skill set that they needed.
So true and so well put. And this concept of separating your identity from a company, and this is something I've wondered over the years, and I'll lay this out in front of you, how much maybe we have to engage that outside of even the pandemic, but just a matter of where life's going. Let me explain it. It's funny you said 2008, because I was going to refer to 2008 as I was speaking of this. In 2008, I did a lot of writing for Startup Nation at the time, and I wrote this article and I said, "Our business models of today like sandcastles?" And where it came from is I was doing a lot of consulting and turnaround consulting at the time, and I would notice a lot of the LA companies, they were third generation companies, etc. But as I was seeing trends change, especially with the technology, a company could be born, the technology's new, and the technology is expired immediately afterwards. So it's like it was challenging to have maybe all companies just grow through generations. And I coined the article, basically, can a business model even go through one generation, yet two? How many new sandcastles do we need to build within time? And I referred to Joseph, I'm going to say his last name wrong, probably Schumpeter, who coined the phrase creative destruction, entrepreneurship and creative and destroying. So I wonder, Barney, as I look out in the marketplace, I ask myself this all the time: how many of the business models today will be around in 2 decades? And maybe as we get more technologically advanced and things go quicker and quicker, we just got to get accustomed to getting in with the understanding that we may be abandoning this whole company and jumping on another idea. And it's just a philosophy that we have to keep in the back of our mind. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that is always we're always thinking about as well, right? Because like our model is it's interesting. Our model started off one way when believe it or not, when we first started our business, our model was to like do social media for small business owners, right? And then it was like we had to reiterate and then challenge those assumptions with something else. We landed at where we're at now, but it took years to develop the model. We've built, crushed, scrapped models just to kind of get to where we're at now. But that's the process of iteration and innovation in order to do anything, tangible. To your point, technologies will advance. They've been advancing at a higher rate now. Moore's law is accelerated at this point now. I mean, with the Chat GTP, AI advancements, it's ridiculous what will sort of take place in the future. It's a constant retooling that needs to happen. I'm part of a mastermind group of me and my guy friends who are all entrepreneurs, which I always recommend people put together groups like that. We get together regularly. We just got together regularly. We're talking to one of my friends who's in the group. He's in a, and I'm trying to explain to him like, hey, look, it's a great idea to think about how you can leverage this AI to help you deal with some of the low level stuff that you don't have to deal with, right? Like reviewing a contract or putting together a contract. I mean, last night I put together an addendum for one of our tenants, with Chat GTP, and I gave him a couple prompts and it shot it out within, like a couple seconds. And it was great. And so Xiomara is coming on, an HR consultant. She's part of the SBDC.
Yeah.
I asked her about creating meal waivers, a waiver for our employees. And she sent me something, but I wanted to be a little more robust. I could put a couple of prompts in an AI, and it shot me out this really detailed thing. I sent it to Xiomara, and she was like, "Tell me where I can create an account." So these technologies will help us. They're tools, right? They will help. It's like a large lever that if we just, pull it down the right way, will help accelerate our business models to new places and extend it, or extend our reach, really. So we have to be able to embrace these things instead of be afraid of them. And I think that's a lot of times entrepreneurs are so comfortable in their space of like, this is what we do, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
that any new introduction of technology or service or opportunities or gaps in the market or even outside competitors scares the hell out of people. Instead of embracing those things and saying, okay, how can I retool this? How can I adapt this? And how can I, you know, and then act like water and just, you know, like kind of move around and based on, you know, change the shape and form based on what's around you. So that's the mindset that one needs to have and be an entrepreneur.
I love that. Lauren, you got to put that act like water in the chat. I love that. Act like water. It's so true. You know, in my early days, I always was somebody. In fact, I go by the name because somebody named me this a long time ago. They called me a feral gypsy, which you could probably see where they got that from, right? But I have always loved change. I love things. I can't stand anything staying the same, right? So that's why I realized a long time ago, if I became a consultant, I could be all over the place, but I would always have my company. So I would look stable and normal because I was, you know, all over the place. But one of the things that I had always struggled with, especially when I would come into companies and I would look at them and see where they're going and where they need to be, and is this question of, when do you know, and this is going to be a hard one, Barney, I know, when do you know to continue to push on and give more oomph? And when do you know to just let it go? That is the life question that is so challenging. You know, I always think, do I need to just push harder to move the boulder? Should I walk around the boulder or should I walk a different way? And I think right now, many are sitting at the edge, and I have my own thoughts. I want you to go first on it. And they're saying, do I continue with the company? Do I not? How do I assess it? Should I try something new? And that is a very emotionally devastating place to be. Any comments on that, Barney?
Yeah, you know, that's tough because there's so many factors that go behind a decision like that. You know, I've met so many people that are holding on to a business that doesn't serve them.
Yep.
But they are in love with the idea of their business baby. And, you know, that is the tough part. The tougher part is coming to a realization that you do not have the skill sets or the discipline to be able to turn it around.
Yeah.
I think that is harder to come to realization because we all think that this is our baby. I know what it needs. I can take care of it better than anybody else, you know. But in reality, a lot of times just are not capable of being a turnaround expert, right? Like, and that's another set of skill sets, right? And knowing what levers to pull and how much you need, and whether it's a business even worth doing for, right? Like, should you turn around, you know, a business that is already like outdated, right? The model is outdated. There's no real market growth penetration. Like, there's no real opportunity to grow that past where it currently is. So all those things need to come into consideration. But I think more importantly, I think the best entrepreneurs that I've ever met to this day are the ones that are most self-aware. There needs to be a level of self-awareness that you just need to constantly be looking at who you are at the moment, what you're missing, and who do you need to become in order to kind of take it to the next place. I always ask myself that question. I'm constantly asking almost every quarter is like, what is required of me to get to the next place? Right? Because if I don't have those things, what do I need to do in order to get to that place? Right? Do I need to read more? Do I need to be more disciplined with time blocking? You know, what is required of me? What is the business asking me to give it that I either am not, or, you know, and that's the thing that people just are, again, self-awareness. If you're not asking yourself those questions, you're just standing there watching the ship burn and saying, like that meme, right? That the dog in the house that everything's burning. It's just like, yeah, this is fine. And, you know, but it's not. And so it's a very personal situation. You have to really kind of be open to. And so, you know, I have a buddy who did that. Everybody does it differently. He just did ayahuasca and he came to realization he was screwing up big time. Everybody's different, right? You can, some people meditate, right? You know, some people go on vacation and they can come to that realization. But I think what needs to happen is you need to give yourself that mental space to think and actually really see what is there and what is not there, and be as like disconnected from the ego as you possibly can be when it comes to that, because that's the problem. It's when you inject too much of yourself and your persona and your identity into it that you can't even see what's in front of you.
I love that. And Lauren, can you please put in there the most successful entrepreneurs have self-reflection, know who they are. I agree so much. And I think that everything in life for me, because I'm big into meditation and everything, comes back to who am I? And it's like that's the biggest question you're born with and you answer. And I think business as well as personal, it just is another way for you to look at who am I and understand. And the more you are self-aware, the better decisions you can make. I want to add, you said such great things. A lot of times too, when I look at companies on the question of going forth or not, I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't recognize in themselves or don't want to. Sometimes, Barney, they're just friggin' tired. They're wore out. They ran the race so long. They don't even have what's in them to go further, but they're pushing and dragging themselves along beyond the emotional status that is good for them. And I've had several conversations in the last week alone where people's health has now been affected by it, by continuing. One of the things that I would add, and I like to have numbers help me. I always, when somebody contacts me and they say, hey, we're looking at, should we continue, should we not? I get asked that a lot. I do a financial analysis where I look at benchmarks. What would have to happen to achieve profitability and what is the feasibility of those events happening? And if I see something like they'd have to double sales and, half cost, okay, that's not going to happen, But I think we can look at financials and numbers and tools to give us a sense of reality to help in our decision process. I think when that decision becomes fully emotionally based is when we really do run into problems. That's when it becomes challenging. We've talked a lot about, and we keep intertwining, which it should be, where the personal and the business and the personal and the business interject. So I got an interesting question for you, Barney. In what ways do you think business relationships are like personal relationships, and in what ways are they not, or maybe should they not be? Thoughts on that one? That's another big topic.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who like to believe in work-life integration, right? Where there's it's a blending and everything. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that is something that we have probably brainwashed ourselves into believing. You can't, people have the integration life, which just means that you're not stopping. Your life is your business, is your life. I like to create a separation for myself. And it's hard because, I find a lot of business people that I do business with, and we form friendships but there's always something there that I can't go all the way fully in because it's like the same way that a personal friend is. And so because it just, it's a business relationship, there has to be a certain layer there that prevents you from going too far deep. I think if you're lucky enough to find somebody that can handle that, and that's the problem. I think that's really the crux of what I'm trying to get at is not everybody you can do business with can handle having a personal relationship and keep it separate.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to have someone like that where you can do business with them and you're actual really good friends, and that doesn't get in the way ever, like when someone asks you for a favor or like, hey, bend on this business thing because we're friends, or then I think go for it. But that's super rare. I think it's really rare. I think when people in business relationships become really close friends, that tends to cast a little bit of a weird shadow when it comes to those things. I had a mentor of mine tell me, you can be friends, but you can be friendly, but you shouldn't be friends.
Friends, yeah.
And so, maybe I don't know if that's 100% all the way I go, because I would consider building relationships very important. On birthdays, give people gifts or celebrate them, go out to eat lunch, hang out with people. But I probably wouldn't go vacation with a business partner or friend. I'm sure not a partner, but like a friend or a business associate that we do business with, or one of my vendors or something like that. I'm not gonna call one of my vendors at 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm drunk and can come pick me up, and I'm just not gonna do that. But so I guess that's where I stand. Probably is there's a little bit of a disconnect that I create with my personal business relationships. I want them to be really great, but I won't allow them to get too deep if I'm doing business with them. Now, if they're just people I meet in the business setting, then I would create friendships friendships are okay. But if I'm actually exchanging like services and products and money, then I think that's where I feel. I don't know. That's my opinion.
I agree with you. And I think where the problem comes from is in our human ego nature. When we define somebody as a friend, we build in, and I don't think it's necessarily correct, but we do build in a level of expectation on what we expect that person to be there for us all the time, etc. So if we approach a business relationship and we cross over, suddenly we can't make decisions for the company that need to be made, which may be no longer working with them, right? And so when it limits our ability to make the decisions for the company that are best to maintain the health of the company, it harms us. And that's where I think our human nature can't go over that level, because our human nature believes in the friends do everything and are always there for us. So I see that as well. I always would go back to the biology concept. You can't kill the host. So if you find yourself killing the host, you have a problem. I want to do a shout out from somebody in the audience real quick. Carolina says, "Hi, Barney." I got to read her email because it's so wonderful, or her message. "I am a huge fan of what you've done with Boulevard Market in my hometown of Montebello." So thank you for saying that. Do you have a favorite book on the topic of entrepreneurship? I know you love certain books. Do you want to mention any book or books that you really like?
I mean, I guess it depends on where you're at in business. If you're starting out or you're having trouble, grasping the idea of what a company should look like and how the fundamentals should act, the E-Myth Revisited has always been my go-to. Like, I love the E-Myth Revisited. For if you're somebody who's looking for a partner, or some of the pitfalls of building a company, the Founder's Dilemma is really good. My professor at USC, I took a negotiations class with Christopher Voss. His book, Never Split the Difference, is really good on negotiation. That's a really good book. The Lean Startup is great. Anything that has to do with new business models. I mean, there's tons of books that I love reading. I'm, reading right now, Be Our Guest. Right? It's like, it's about customer service. So I think the constant looking for like information to kind of make you stronger is always good, no matter what. So, but some of those books I think would be great. I think the E-Myth Revisited is a tried and testimony. Like, that's like every entrepreneur should read that book, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it talks about like what you should be doing as an entrepreneur versus a technician who's like running the company and like doing the thing that a business does, and like it's a really good framework for how to set your mind in place as a business owner.
Wonderful. I will say, and I'm going to throw it to you, Barney, for some final thoughts. I think, first of all, I want to say thank you, because this was the kind of conversation that I wanted to have. And I hope those in the audience have come away inspired. Also, my goal was to get some distance between you and what you may be experiencing in your business, because I think at the end of the day, the goal in life, and I have to use a word that people use but to define it, is to be happy. But I think to be happy is to be peaceful and excited inside, where you wake up and you're energized and you're tackling and you're taking on things. And I think if you get too tied into the success and the outcome of the company and the fear of the company, you end up losing out on that. I remember when I was 31, because it was 31 that I moved from Texas to California. I shut down my marketing company because I wanted to move. I had this motto: you can't been done at 31. Didn't rhyme, wasn't, it rhymed, but it wasn't English proper, right? But I was sitting in my garage trying to sell off all the belongings from the physical location of my office. And there was a bunch of index cards that I was selling, along with pens and pencils, and everything was there. And it was a hot Texas morning. And I was thinking of all the nights that I spent worried about the company failing, didn't go and do something with friends because I'd invest every moment of my life to this company, and how throughout the entire time of owning my company, which was close to 4 or 5 years, I can't remember, it was some time. I think I started like 24, 25. I was constantly in a back of my mind, worried and stressed. And I literally, as the expression today, laughed out loud in the garage by myself. And I said to myself, "You fool." you worried night and day, and in the end, you chose to shut it down. And then I said to myself, what if during that time period, I would have relaxed? I would have enjoyed myself. I would have chilled out. I would have not put so much pressure on me. So I took an index card, true story here. I wrote on it, I will never again regret the past or fear the future. I will live in the present moment. I taped it to my steering wheel because I was going to get in my car and drive from Dallas to LA with my 2 cats at the time to start my new life in LA. Now, I'd love to tell you, Barney, that after that, I changed my perspective and I understood so much.